Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Thomas Hill. I'm with CD Technology. I have our Chief Operations Officer and also cybersecurity guru, Wes Bruce, with us today. Wes, say hello to everybody.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
We're glad to have Wes with us to kind of talk about the history of cybersecurity and the changes that happen really rapidly. And so we're going to be kind of talking about that. We're going to talk about the stack that we use, the things that we think are important to keep safe, and then we're going to be kind of talking about the future of cybersecurity and the things that are out there. So we want to welcome everybody. I've got several people that are live with us, and of course, we've got a lot of people that are signed up that are going to watch it remotely. The terrible thing about that is the people that are going to watch it remotely are not eligible for the $50 Aubrey's gift card that we're going to give away at the end. And so if you're here, and I see that Micah Kilgore is here, he's already posted hello. It's good to hear from you, Micah. Also, what company are you with now, Micah? I don't know that we noticed the company that you're with, but anyway, anybody else that's with us today live, go ahead and just post a hello or what company you're with in the chat box there, and that way we'll know that. Uh, oh, awesome! Are you actually in Houston, Micah, or are you doing a remote office here somewhere? And then Sam, I don't know that I recognize who you're with as well. If you don't mind posting your company for us so that we know. Um, anyway, so let's go ahead and dive into this and kind of talk about first of all the history of cybercrime. So I found it really interesting that technically cybercrime first happened in 1834, which is kind of crazy actually because 1834 is was there even the internet? No, there was no internet. So how do they call it cybercrime? And so apparently attackers stole financial market information using the French telegraph system. And so I guess my understanding is they would put financial market information across the telegraph, and I guess somebody intercepted that information and then used it to benefit themselves. So technically that is the first idea that cybercrime was kind of a real thing. I don't think there was any virus protection software back then. Wes, did you know that? Did you see that article?
I did not know that one. Definitely wouldn't have guessed cybercrime, but I guess technically it's using, communication, so
Right.
it fits, I suppose. I'm not sure how you
Yeah,
protect against it with tools, but definitely
I know. Kind of
unique.
crazy. Um, so really kind of going through the history here a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the ones that I think is kind of interesting. Really, the first virus was created in 1971, and that was on the ARPANET network, which is kind of the precursor, several precursors to the internet that we have today. And really, that particular was kind of a research project more than anything. But that's really where it first started. But in today's most modern world, we can really kind of start seeing the effects of cybersecurity in 1989 when the first ransomware appeared. So what was interesting about this particular strain of ransomware is that it was distributed on 20,000 infected floppy disks, and it was actually at an AIDS some sort of an AIDS awareness conference. And so I guess they handed out 20,000 floppy disks to different people. And when they put that floppy disk in their computer, it infected the computer. So that was the first ransomware. And I guess it locked up their computers at that point. Of course, ransomware is not like it is today. It's much more um, much more devastating. There were definitely ways around this particular ransomware in 1989, but definitely much more devastating these days. Um, the next one that I wanted to point out is Kevin Mitnick, which I'm a huge fan of Kevin Mitnick. He's kind of like the father of social engineering, and he was a hacker, in the idea of kind of getting in there and stealing information, but he didn't so much like hack into networks or bypass firewalls and that kind of thing. What he primarily did was use social engineering, which social engineering is a way of basically tricking a user to do something that they normally would not do. And so that's the interesting thing about Kevin Mitnick, and he actually went on to serve prison time, and then he came out of prison and developed a white hat hacking company where instead of hacking into AT&T just for the fun of it, he now hacks AT&T. Of course, he has since passed, but when he was alive, he was hacking into AT&T because they were paying him to do it to find the vulnerabilities. So
One thing
definitely,
interesting about him, Thomas,
yeah,
I heard him speak, and I actually read his book too. He's a very interesting person. But when he was arrested, the judge actually wouldn't allow him to make phone calls because they were literally afraid that he would send codes to nuclear weapons over the
and
payphone and start stuff like that. So they wouldn't even let him like get just unrestricted phone calls out to whoever he wanted to. They would have to dial the number for him, hand him the handset, and then he would speak. So it's a
yeah,
little
no,
interesting there.
yeah, because in 19, it doesn't even seem like 1995 is that long ago. I mean, I remember 1995, and but so little was known about cybersecurity at the time and what could be done and couldn't be done, and he just always amazed people at what he could do, and yeah, you're right. The judge threw him in solitary confinement. So um, let's see here. So how about some other? You have any other interesting ones that you thought were interesting, Wes?
There was some that I remember early on, and I'm not sure exactly when this one started, but there was the ransomware viruses and stuff that were coming out. And that was the big scare. Everybody was getting locked down. It would show your image on the computer and take pictures of you and made you think you were getting arrested by the FBI. And that was a pretty big scare. I remember early on, but there's
Yeah,
a lot
so
of different creative ones out there.
yeah, so that's I think right around 2014.
Mhm.
There was so Celebgate was a popular one at the time, and that's where hackers were hacking into iCloud accounts and basically sharing nude images of celebrities and kind of thing, or they would ransom that information and tell them that they were going to release those if they didn't pay. That's really where password management came. It kind of became more of a something that we need to look at a little bit closer, because what was happening was a lot of people, and a lot of people today still, they reuse passwords, and a lot of these cyber criminals would be able to guess the password or maybe trick the user into using like their Netflix password. They would trick you into resetting your Netflix account, and really they were stealing your password, and then they use that password to get into things like your iCloud account or your Google G Suite account or something like that. And so
Never reuse
uh,
passwords.
yeah, so that's definitely something for sure. Um, I think 2013 was an interesting one. Just kind of going back a couple of years, Target had a huge patch or huge um, scam that was done on them. And what was interesting about it is there was an HVAC contractor that had some of their equipment plugged into the network. And what had happened was some hacker was able to get into that HVAC contractor's device, whatever that is, and it was I guess, an early form of Internet of Things, and so they were able to get into that device, and by getting into that device, they were able to get into the rest of the Target network, and so over 110 million Target customers lost credit card information during that phishing attack. So that's kind of interesting.
The Internet of
Um,
Things is a whole new world of problems because you got people that are putting regular cameras and stuff up in their houses, and they
Yep.
leave the default password on the camera, and then all of a sudden that's able to be accessed from China or something like that because they don't think about just changing default passwords on that stuff.
Yeah, and then, in the most modern time, 2020, 2021, Russia and China and some of our adversaries have really gotten into, um, hacking us. Of course, SolarWinds comes up, and the Colonial
Mhm.
Pipeline hack all kind of come up, and this is bringing like modern day warfare instead of like the cold era. We're kind of hacking as kind of the new modern day warfare, and so that's what we're seeing a lot of right now.
Yeah, because when you
Um,
talk about when Mitnick was doing things at that early stages, a lot of the times it was just younger people trying to do something fun to entertain
mhm.
themselves, and it was just more mischief than anything. And now we're getting all the way to the point where it's entire nation states they're using it to actually have war against other countries.
Yeah, so CD Technology, we have been in business, since like 1989, and so we've been doing this for quite a while, um, and I can remember, starting this business in 1989 and really virus protection really being a new thing then. Um, you know, the Norton, the McAfees, that kind of thing, we would start seeing that and start seeing opportunities for us to sell that. And, we would tell a lot of customers, well, if you're a residential customer, if you just have a good security software in place, and if you're a business, then have some security software in place and maybe a firewall, and that was kind of what our suggestions would be for a company back then. But that has changed a lot through the years, and so we kind of want to talk a little bit about how that's changed through the years, why it's changed through the years, and what it is that we're doing as a security company to kind of stay on top of that. So you know, the title of this is it's not 2001 anymore. We need to stay up with the times. And if your IT company is telling you that, they haven't changed the endpoint security in a couple of years, I can promise you that endpoint security is probably not valid anymore. You want to touch on that, Wes?
Yeah, so thinking about 2001, and I guess I was in college. I wasn't even using my own computer. I had to borrow my roommate's computer, and the worst things we had to worry about was some random virus through an email or something like that. But now we have more powerful computers in our pockets, so things have definitely changed. As the problems have evolved, so has the approaches we've come up with to fight that. So you start out, you had your firewall, you had your basic antivirus like Norton or something like that, and that was basically to where you'd see viruses coming out and they'd have a specific signature, and antiviruses could just kind of scan the computers for anything that had those signatures and they could stop it. Well, as those antivirus software came out and they started stopping it, they started making changes to get by that. So different methods to get through, and the antivirus wouldn't detect it. So then you'd look at upgrading your firewall to a managed firewall that started tracking like sites that were known to be malicious or certain change in signatures and things like that. So you'd be able to manage the traffic coming in and out, but then you'd also have certain things that would get by your managed firewall. And you'd have to have an antivirus that was managed. So you don't have it just running by itself on the computer and taking care of the problem. It would actually have to, it would identify some issues, but then it would have to alert somebody that would have to make the changes on the computer or remediations or things like that. It required extra input because the antivirus by itself couldn't just take care of it. So as that started rolling out, they started, making subtle changes that even if an antivirus couldn't stop it, but could alert to it, they would either do it, at a time that maybe somebody wouldn't be paying attention, or something so subtle that an antivirus wouldn't really notice and send out an alert. So there wouldn't be anybody making any changes, and they could make those subtle changes And with that, you'd have to have, more advanced antivirus. And so we started bringing in things to start thinking, okay, how are these getting into the systems in the first place? Because the firewall still doing a decent job, but it still has to let traffic through. So what's the traffic coming through that is allowing these issues? And it kind of comes back to who we talked about before with Kevin Mitnick, social engineering and communication with people that have legit communication going on the internet. So you're seeing emails. So we would have people coming in and they'd get these emails that look like, completely legit emails, but maybe there's a few words that are misspelled, and everybody's seen a phishing email before, and you have to start training. So we'd provide some training to people so they could start looking at different URLs and saying, okay, even though this URL says target.com, if you hover over the top of it, it says something completely different on where it's actually going. So we have these training videos and stuff that we do with people, and we'd also send out simulations of phishing so that we could kind of test them. So you've got that going on where you're trying to inform people, making sure they're staying on top of it and really checking any of the messages that are coming through. But beyond that, we started seeing some emails that everybody is getting fooled by. They're really well crafted, just stuff that you're not going to. They start using information that they find on LinkedIn, and they're like, okay, well, this person's part of this company. They do this kind of work, so I'll send them a tailored email that is something that they've already done business with these people. And so to combat that, we added some email security that uses AI to investigate the email and say, okay, there's a link in this email, but the link goes to a site that we know is malicious. So we're going to go ahead and stop this. Now, your basic, Microsoft 365, Gmail, and things like that has spam protection, but it's not advanced enough to catch the new things that they were doing. So with an advanced email security in place, it would start, at the very least, it'll give you a flag saying, this has some things that might be okay, but you've also never received an email from this IP address. And so it'll alert you to kind of be a little more suspicious about it. But even at that point, they started, recognizing that those things are getting put in place. And so I remember seeing one recently where it was very impressive. It took me a while to look at it and really investigate why it had any issues. But when it would come through, there was a link on it, and it was a well-written email. It had no grammatical errors or anything like that. It was from a company. They actually had hacked into another person's email and used that email to send this one out. So it came from a valid email address and had a link on it that was for a proposal. And a lot of times they get blocked because these links are malicious. Well, this link, it wasn't malicious. It went to a website. It was like a bookings website to create a calendar meeting with somebody. But on that website where they had this whole company profile, there was another link for that proposal. You click on that link, it takes you to a page that looks like a login for Microsoft 365. And at that point, it brings up the prompt. You're like, okay, let me bring in here, because a lot of times nowadays we talk about having good passwords, but even beyond that, you most of the time need to have multi-factor, to where it sends a code. And so you put in your information here, and then it asks for the two-factor. And what they would do is, this was actually a website that they had created to look like Microsoft, and it would steal the password information. It would also steal the token that was the login credentials for that. And so they wouldn't even need your password anymore, need your two-factor. They could just use that token and log in and wreak all kind of havoc. And so since they have even that going on, we also started rolling out a SOC, or a Security Operations Center kind of setup, where you actually have humans 24/7 looking at the traffic going on and looking at, like one of the things they would do is, once they got into this person's email, they would they would put in a forwarding rule to where, it would send traffic to them, and anything coming into that mailbox would be automatically archived. So they wouldn't see any emails coming in. And so they would then blast everybody with the spam emails. And when people would respond back saying, hey, I think you're getting weird emails sent out, they wouldn't know, because there was a rule put in there for them not to see it. So the Security Operations Center is looking for those kind of odd, things like, are you sure
Odd behaviors.
odd behaviors that are going on. Like this isn't something you usually do, or if they would see Excel all of a sudden send a command out to use PowerShell, not a typical thing. So the SOC would send a message to us, and then we could either reach out to the customer if we know that's not something that should be happening. We could lock down that computer and prevent it from doing anything on the network, so nothing else would get infected or have any malware or anything like that going out. So we've just tried to stay as much ahead of the game as you can, because every day they're coming out with something new, and those are a lot of the tools that we're using now to kind of fight against that.
So over the last 5 years, Wes, I mean, how many times do you think that we have updated our tool stack over the last 5 years to make changes to make sure that we're current with what we're protecting against? How often do you think we're making changes?
I mean, every year we're either updating a tool because one tool we were using doesn't quite keep up with what's out there, or there's a completely new threat that needs a new tool. So I would say 2, 3 times a year we're readdressing what's going on and what we need to change to stay on top of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And and so a lot of so again, I kind of go back to talk to a lot of people and they're like, "Oh, well, we've got virus protection or my IT guy taking care of me, and I'll try and press and ask some more questions. Well, what how exactly is he taking care of you? And a lot of times they'll just say, "Well, I know there's software on there, he's doing updates or whatever the problem or whatever they think is going on." But the reality of the matter is if you don't have a security company that is keeping on top of the most current cybersecurity scams that are out there and putting tools in place to protect against that, or maybe not even tools, but systems and processes in place sometimes to protect against that, then you're probably not being protected. Um, like I can tell you in the last 5 years, I bet we have changed our endpoint security probably 3 or 4 times, or we have added on to it. We have gone from, so this is a kind of an example I like to try and use. A lot of people say, well, so the antivirus, if you're talking about your house, the antivirus is kind of like the lock on the door of your house. And then, you have the EDR or MDR software that sits on top of that antivirus. And, you know, we, and that is the, um, kind of the security system that goes around the house. And then the SOC is kind of like the the uh, the hired guard or the security professional that's sitting in the living room. That's probably the best way to describe that. And so through the years we have added on and added on and added on to each and every one of those. um, so Sam, I appreciate your question. You're wanting to know what specific tools that we're using, and actually, I'm not going to share those in an open environment because of security reasons. I would be happy to set up a meeting with you and talk about that separately to talk about the specific tools that we're using. The main purpose of this webinar is to just kind of talk about um, the reasons that we use the tools that we use, which is the endpoint security, the EDR, MDR, the SOC, why we use um, security training software, why we use spam filtering software and managed firewalls and those kind of things, as opposed to some of the old fashioned stuff. So and again, we're adding all these layers of security, which are kind of like layers of an onion. And practically every year or twice a year, like Wes talked about, we're having to make updates to that. um, so one of the things on the slide that's right here in front of us, it talks about the costliest cyber crimes out there. So business email compromise has always been one of the top ones, and I found it interesting when I pulled this slide a couple days ago that it now is it's down to the second most. Investment scams are now the highest. Now, of course, business email compromise. That's we're talking about spear phishing and phishing scams and that kind of thing that you get through the email. And of course, those have gotten very sophisticated, kind of like Wes has talked about. A lot of times what you're seeing now is you're seeing cyber criminals hacking into the computers, the people that you trust, and those cyber criminals are sending out emails from those people that you trust. However, don't even know that their email account has been compromised, and so now, so it used to be you would say, well, don't open anything from anybody that you don't know. Well, now you just can't open anything from anybody that you know or don't know or anything. You can't safely open things, without making sure that you have the proper tools in place that will safeguard you. And even then, the purpose of the security training tools is to make you think twice before you open something, and so that's why all those things are put in place. But anyway, going back to business compromise email, I just found it very interesting that it fell down into the second spot, and now investment scams are the number one thing. What's interesting about investment scams is and those have seen huge growth over the last couple of years. These are kind of the long con type scams. There's a lot of different variations of this particular scam, but for the most part, what ends up happening is it starts out on dating sites a lot of times, and so you may find yourself on a dating site, trying to decide if you're going to have a relationship with a particular person or not, um, and and what ends up happening is you'll develop this relationship with someone who ends up being an actual hacker, and it's a long distance relationship, which is not unusual these days. But they'll talk on the phone and maybe even talk on um, um, using an app with video chat and that kind of thing. And a lot of times they're using AI to disguise who they actually are, or they'll use actors. So a lot of times they'll hire, like if you're a guy and you're on a dating site, they'll hire a good looking girl to be your date on the site. But basically, this will go on for months. And then what will happen is this particular cyber criminal will say, hey, I just made a whole bunch of money on this website. I invested $1,000 or $5,000 or something like that, and just 30 days I was able to make $30,000 or $40,000. And then they'll provide the link of the website, which you know um, it's a fake site, obviously, but it looks real. It looks just like the legitimate sites, except it, it's the wrong address. But nobody really ever notices most of the time. And what happens is, they may let you invest $1,000, and in 30 days you might make $20,000, and the criminal might even let you withdraw that 20,000, and get you to maybe invest $100,000 next time, or $200,000 next time, depending on how big of a mark that person might be, as far as how big of a bank account that they might have. And then they'll let more time go by, and then sooner or later, you'll check that fake investment account and it'll be wiped out. And this is happening very regularly, and sadly enough, there are a lot of people that are losing their lives over it as well. I have seen many news articles that talks about people that had drawn friends into this. And that's the other thing that's scary about this is, which is why it's a long game, is once you made that $20,000 off the $1,000 that you put in there, you start telling all your friends, and then you get your friends to invest into the site, and then they start losing money. And I have seen news articles about people taking their lives because of this, because they just had so much grief over it. And unfortunately, like I said, I was very sad to see that investment loss, cybercrime is way up. It's 38% increase over last year. So that's just terrible. So Micah had a quick note. He says we use security training tools like KnownBe4. Actually, I believe that's a Kevin Mitnick company, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But a lot of users ignore the training and still make the same mistakes. Any advice on how to train users so the info sticks? So to be perfectly honest with you, Micah, the only way that I have found to really make training useful is to do live training. Um, so we use I think we recently moved to a new company. I'm not even sure I remember the name of the new company we're using, but we do have an online company that we use that's similar to Know Before. However, what I have found is that I have developed an hour long um, kind of training, employee training, and I have actually performed that on one of these webinars earlier this year. I think you can actually I think you can go back and find it on our website. Um, but a lot of times I will either do a live webinar like this, or I'll do a webinar at the business. If the business has quite a few employees, if they have 30 or more employees, something like that, then we'll go to the business and provide like lunch or breakfast or something, and I'll just do a live training right there. And I've got a lot of examples. Try to keep it fun to try and keep them engaged. um, I feel like that's where we have had the most success when you're talking about security training tools. So great
Another thing
question.
to go off of that I've also seen pretty successful is when the company itself makes a bit of a competition out of it. So a lot of
Yeah.
times when you do simulated phishing emails, you can keep the statistics of who's clicked on it, who is sent in, hey, this is something that was a problem email or something like that, and they'll give out awards to those who click on the least, or kind of tease those who aren't paying attention and click on everything. So that also tends to help too. That's just kind of a part of the culture and environment that you create with the company on making that kind of fun.
Yeah, and you can make that either negative or positive too. So we have tried to encourage our clients to do the positive side of it, which is what you're talking about, which is keep track of who's not clicking and award those people. In fact, there for a while, we were doing a security of the year, or security of the quarter award ourselves, and we would award somebody in one of our companies that did a great job, and we would award a gift card and that kind of thing. So that's one way. But to be honest with you, on the negative side, another way that you can look at it is, I know for I was talking to the IT manager of Tenova, which Tenova is a big medical facility here in East Tennessee. And I was talking to the IT manager. Well, actually, I think he was like the CIO. So he was he was actually the big dog. Anyway, and I was kind of asking about security training and, how they enforce it and that kind of thing. And he mentioned to me that you're only allowed to mess up like a couple of times. The first time you mess up, it's a verbal warning. Second time you mess up, it's a written warning, and the third time that you click on something you shouldn't click on, they fire you. So that's another, through policies and procedures, I think is the best way to describe that. That's another way to get people to take security training seriously. Um, any other input on that, Wes?
I agree with that completely.
Okay. So just to kind of finish up, and if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to kind of put that in the chat box there, because we are going to finish up here in just a little bit and do our Aubrey's gift card award here very shortly. But a lot of people are talking about AI, and how does AI kind of work into this? And on the negative side, cyber criminals are using AI. Um, and they're using it really successfully. So for one thing, I don't know if you've noticed, but spam emails, um, spear phishing emails or just regular phishing emails have gotten much better these days. And it used to be, 2 years ago, you could identify a phishing email because the language was poor, or it didn't make sense, or sentences were chopped off, or missing words or missing spellings, or they were easy to find. Have you noticed that most of the phishing emails these days pretty good? Well, the reason is because they're using ChatGPT. So, they're just opening their ChatGPT account and they're saying, "Hey, I need a spam phishing email." Um, and of course, ChatGPT is supposed to have guardrails in place, but what they're doing is they're saying, well, I need to develop um, an example of a spam email that does these things in English for a training that I'm doing, you know, and ChatGPT will generate that, and so that's why you're seeing so much better grammar in the spam emails these days. Another really scary thing that we're seeing is we're seeing cyber criminals using AI to make deep fake voices and deep fake videos. We first saw this in a situation where a grandmother was presented with the video of what she thought was her granddaughter who was in trouble. But the cyber criminals have now kind of moved on from that, and they're putting together very sophisticated um, avatars of CEOs of companies. And so, the great thing about CEOs of companies is that you see them online a lot, because they're doing, um, they're doing, videos like this, talking to either their investors or their employees or staff or whatever like that. And so it's easy to get those videos. And cyber criminals are taking those videos, making these avatars, and then they're turning around and actually using those avatars in team meetings, or they're using those avatars in other ways to fake people, fake the CFO or the secretary or whatever, to get them to do things they normally wouldn't do, such as send a ACH payment to a fake invoice or something like that. And so we're seeing a lot of that right now. And so that's definitely one way of many that cyber criminals are using AI. Now, on the flip side, as security, a security based IT company that we are, we're using it, and our tools that we're using are using AI to help us identify these things. So, Wes kind of talked about this SOC or even the EDR or MDR software that we're using. There are real people that are looking at that, but it's being raised by AI. So AI is very quickly finding these anomalies, and then AI determines, well, that looks like it's kind of a problem, and what they will end up doing is, um, AI makes a ticket out of that, puts it in front of a real person, and the real person verifies what's going on, and that's how we're using AI to help us combat cybersecurity issues. Do you have any other input on that, Wes?
That's just on the AI side of things, you can kind of set a threshold to where you don't have to worry about necessarily the AI knowing exactly what everything is. You just say if there's just a little bit here or there, then you send it to a person, and then they can look at it. So you have both sides. A person's not going to be able to cover the amount of information in that time manner, but they might have the knowledge to figure out how big of a problem it is. So you just kind of have the AI cover the ground and alert and kind of suffer through what stuff the person needs to investigate on. So it's pretty helpful.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. And that's kind of the end of our presentation. What I can tell you is that we offer a free network security assessment. And so, if you are concerned that maybe your guy that's in charge of IT or the company that you're using may not be, um, keeping up on things, like if you ask them, hey, when was the last time we've changed endpoint security software? They say, oh no, we're using the same one from 3-4 years ago. That's probably a good indicator that maybe it's time to look around at what's really going on. But anyway, we offer a completely free IT assessment, and we will be happy to set up an appointment, do that for you. Usually it's about a 40 to 50 page assessment that'll just kind of give you an idea of what your threat looks like. So if that's something that you're interested in, reach out to me. Again, my name is Thomas Hill. I'm with CD Technology. My email address is thill@cdtechnology.com in case you have any specific questions. And I've put all our names into a hat here, and it looks like the winner of our $50 Aubrey's gift card is Micah Kilgore. So, Micah, congratulations. Melissa will be reaching out to you to get that card to you, and we really appreciate everyone that's been on the webinar here. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to email me directly at thill@cdtechnology.com. So anyway, everyone go off and make it a great day. We'll see y'all later.